There is a specific sound that haunts you when you are poor. It isn't the sound of a growling stomach or the wind rattling through a single-pane window, though I knew those sounds well. It is the electronic, hollow buzz of a card reader denying a transaction. That double beep is the soundtrack of humiliation. I was 22 years old. I was standing in a fluorescent-lit grocery store aisle on a rainy Tuesday in November. In my arms, my daughter Maya was screaming the way only an overtired, hungry 2-year-old can scream. On the conveyor belt sat our survival kit, a generic bag of diapers, a gallon of milk, and a rotisserie chicken. It was Maya's birthday. The chicken was the cake. I had swiped my debit card, beep beep. Declined, the cashier said. She didn't look up. She was chewing gum, indifferent to the fact that my world was collapsing. Please, I whispered, sweat pricking my hairline. Try it again, I know there's $5 in there. She sighed, a long, exasperated exhale that signaled to the line of people behind me that I was a waste of time. She swiped it again. Beep beep. The heat rose in my cheeks. I felt the eyes of the woman behind me burning into my neck. I looked at Maya's tear-streaked face. I had failed. I couldn't even provide a chicken for her birthday. I started to reach for the bird to put it back, my hands trembling. To understand why that moment broke me, you have to understand where I was. I wasn't just broke, I was drowning. Maya's mother had left 6 months prior. She said she couldn't handle the lack of ambition. I was working the graveyard shift at a warehouse, loading pallets from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and then rushing home to relieve the babysitter I could barely afford. During the day, I tried to study. I was taking online courses to get my paralegal certification. I slept in 2-hour bursts. I ate the leftovers from Maya's plate. My apartment was a basement unit with a persistent mold problem and a landlord who didn't believe in heating. That $18.42 the old man spent wasn't just money. It was a lifeline. We ate that chicken for 3 days. The bones became soup. The gesture sparked something in me, a furious, burning drive. I pasted that receipt to my bathroom mirror. Every morning while I brushed my teeth in the cold, I looked at it. Balance the ledger. I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I got angry. I worked double shifts. I studied until my eyes bled. I finished my certification top of my class. Then miraculously I got a scholarship to law school from an anonymous donor fund. I assumed it was luck. I assumed the universe was finally balancing the scales because I had suffered enough. I moved us out of the basement. I bought my first suit from a thrift store, then my first suit from a department store, and finally my first bespoke suit from a tailor in downtown Chicago. I buried the memory of the poverty. I buried the boy who cried in the checkout line. I became Jonathan Sterling-esque senior partner, the shark. By the time I turned 42, the receipt was long gone. I think I lost it during the third move, the one to the penthouse in the Gold Coast district, or maybe I threw it out. It didn't fit the aesthetic of my new life. I had become a man I didn't recognize, though I wouldn't have admitted it then. I drove a Porsche 911. I wore watches that cost more than my father made in a year. I grew impatient with waitstaff. I honked at old ladies crossing the street. I told myself I deserved this. I built this. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. Maya was 21 now, studying art history in Paris. I paid her tuition without blinking. When she called me to talk about her struggles with a difficult professor, I would cut her off. Just handle it, Maya. Do you know what I was doing at your age? I was starving. I used my past trauma as a weapon to validate my current arrogance. I had convinced myself that because I had suffered, I was owed the world. I had forgotten the face of the man in the gray coat. I had forgotten that I didn't pull myself up alone. Then came the phone call that shattered my glass castle. It was a Tuesday, raining just like that day in the grocery store. My secretary buzzed me. Mr. Sterling, there is an estate attorney on line 1, a Mr. Henderson. He says it regards the death of an Arthur Vance. I don't know an Arthur Vance, I said, annoyed. Tell him he has the wrong number. He says Mr. Vance has been watching you since Kroger's 2002. Mr. Henderson gave me an address. It wasn't in the wealthy suburbs where I lived. It was in a quiet, working-class neighborhood on the south side. A place where the houses were small, the lawns were hand-mowed, and the fences were chain-link. I pulled my Porsche up to the curb, feeling painfully out of place. The house was a small brick bungalow. The paint on the trim was peeling slightly. The porch had a swing that looked like it had rusted in place 30 years ago. "This is it?" I asked Henderson, who was waiting for me on the sidewalk. He was a solemn man with a briefcase that looked heavy. Mr. Vance was a man of specific habits, Henderson said. He was the silent founder of Vance Logistics. He sold the company in 1998 for $300 million. I stared at the tiny house. He was a multimillionaire and he lived here. He didn't believe in excess, Henderson said, unlocking the front door. He believed in the project. We stepped inside. The house smelled of old paper, dust, and peppermint. It was clean but sparse. No flat-screen TVs, no expensive art, just bookshelves crammed with binders. It looked like a library for a man trying to solve a math equation that didn't exist. He left you the house, Henderson said, and the contents of the study. He said you were the only one who would understand the filing system. Henderson opened the door to the study at the back of the house. I expected a normal office, maybe a desk, a computer, a safe. I wasn't prepared for the walls. They were covered in corkboards floor to ceiling, and pinned to every square inch of cork were receipts, thousands of them, faded thermal paper, yellowed handwritten notes, crisp new printouts. They fluttered slightly as the door opened. In the center of the room was a simple wooden desk. On it sat a single file folder with my name, Jonathan Sterling. I walked to the walls. I peered closely at the receipts. Walmart 1999 baby formula $12.50. Shell Station 2005 full tank $45. CVS 2011 antibiotics $22. Under each receipt, written in red Sharpie, was a status update. Subject relapsed, subject dropped out, subject ghosted. What is this? I whispered. The ledger, Henderson said from the doorway. Arthur didn't believe in traditional charity. He called it angel investing for the soul. He would find people at their lowest point when their card declined, when they were counting pennies at the pump, and he would intervene, just once. Then he would track the investment. My heart hammered against my ribs. I walked to the desk and opened my file. There, clipped to the front page, was a photocopy of my receipt. November 12, 2002, rotisserie chicken, milk, diapers, total $18.42. I flipped through the file. Tears pricked my eyes hot and fast. It wasn't just the receipt. There was a copy of my law school application. There was a bank transfer record from the Vance Trust to the University of Chicago Law School, the anonymous scholarship. There was a letter of recommendation sent to my first law firm, signed by a senator I had never met. A senator who, I later learned, sat on the board of Vance Logistics. I sank into the leather chair. The room spun. I didn't do it, I choked out. I didn't do any of it. For 20 years, I had walked around with a chest puffed out, telling anyone who would listen that I defied the odds, that I was special, that I worked harder than everyone else. But I hadn't. I had been pushed, I had been carried, I had been funded. The man in the gray coat hadn't just bought me dinner, he had bought me a life. He had cleared the path, removed the obstacles, and greased the wheels of destiny so that my hard work would actually yield results. How many people worked just as hard as me but stayed in the basement because nobody paid their tuition? How many fathers lost custody because nobody bought that one tank of gas? My ego, that hard shell I had built around myself, cracked. It shattered into a million pieces. I wasn't a self-made man, I was a beneficiary. Why? I asked Henderson. Why didn't he tell me? Read the letter, Henderson said. I unfolded the handwritten letter. The script was shaky, written likely days before he died. Dear Jonathan, if you are reading this, the ticker on my heart has finally stopped. You are probably angry, you probably feel like a fraud, you aren't. I paid for the groceries, Jonathan, I paid for the school, but I didn't study until 4 a.m. for you. I didn't work those double shifts at the warehouse. I didn't raise that little girl to be a brilliant young woman. You did that. I just bought you the shoes, you ran the race. I watched you for 20 years, I saw you lose your way a bit, son. I saw you buy the fancy car and stop looking people in the eye. It happens. We think that because we climbed the mountain we are better than the people at the bottom. We forget that someone held the ladder. I have left you the bungalow. I have also left you the remainder of the Vance estate, approximately $42 million. I gasped, the paper shook in my hands. But there is a condition. You cannot just give it away to a foundation. You cannot write a check and walk away. That is lazy charity. You must become the keeper of the ledger. You have to go to the grocery stores, you have to go to the gas stations, you have to look for the fear in their eyes, you have to find the ones with the fire but no fuel, and you have to be their silent partner. Don't let them know, let them believe they did it. Confidence is the greatest gift you can give. Balance the ledger, Jonathan. I sat in that chair until the sun went down. Henderson left me alone with the ghosts of the receipts. I thought about the failed investments on the wall, the people who took the help and didn't make it. Arthur kept them up there too. He didn't judge them, he just acknowledged that he tried. I thought about Maya. I picked up the phone and called her in Paris. It was 2 a.m. there. Dad, she answered groggy, is everything okay? No, I said, my voice cracking. I'm sorry, Maya, I'm so sorry I made you feel like you had to be perfect. I didn't do this alone, I had help, a lot of help. We talked for 2 hours, I told her everything. For the first time in years, I wasn't the great Jonathan Sterling, I was just her dad. The next day, I didn't quit my job. I love the law, but I made changes. I sold the Porsche. I bought a sensible sedan. I moved out of the penthouse and into a nice but modest condo closer to the city center. And I started visiting the bungalow every weekend. I started organizing the files. Then last Tuesday, I put on an old coat. I drove to a neighborhood not far from where I used to live. I walked into a grocery store. I stood in line behind a young woman. She looked about 20. She was wearing scrubs, looking exhausted, like she had just finished a 12-hour shift. She was buying baby formula and a frozen pizza. She swiped her card, the machine beeped, the red letters flashed, DECLINED. Her shoulders slumped. It was the posture of total defeat. I knew that posture, I could feel it in my own bones. I'm sorry, she whispered to the cashier. I get paid on Friday, I'll put the pizza back. She looked at the formula, she looked at the pizza. She was calculating if she could go hungry so the baby could eat. I stepped forward, I didn't swipe a black card, I pulled out cash. I got it, I said. She spun around, sir, no, I can't. It's okay, I said, smiling, a real smile, it's just a pizza. I paid, I handed her the receipt. I saw the confusion and the relief wash over her face. Thank you, she said, tears forming. You don't know what this means. I do, I said, I really do. I reached into my pocket and handed her a card. It wasn't my law firm card, it was a plain white card with a phone number and a single email address, theledgerproject@gmail.com. Keep the receipt, I told her, echoing the words that saved my life 20 years ago. And if you ever need to balance the ledger, give us a call. She walked out into the rain. I watched her go. Then I went home to the bungalow, pinned a copy of the receipt to the wall and wrote in red marker,